Good afternoon, and nice to be speaking to this audience that cares really about diversity and inclusion in the recent AI landscape. A little bit about myself, I'm Vrushali Sawant, and I'm a data scientist with SAS's Data Ethics Practice. And what the practice does is we are focusing on responsible and trustworthy AI strategy and implementation for SaaS, and how does these responsible AI practices actually turn in our SaaS platform. That is what we do. A little bit about myself, I'm an engineer, I'm a marketer, and now turned the data scientist, grad and a professional, and a baker at heart, so I love baking. And I've lived and studied, worked in different places in India. I'm originally from Mumbai, India, living here in Raleigh for the last 10, 15 years now. So a lot of cultural language differences and gone through all of that and still trying to make sense how all these things can make sense to technology. I speak and comprehend about 4 languages, and you'd be like, why are we talking about languages? Because that is what is my talk going to be. I'm going to focus on what are some of the aspects of language diversity in generative AI that can make sure that we are building an inclusive AI for everyone. Because when I think of language, it is very close to my heart because you think and you express about yourselves and about your happiness, about your pain, anything, you express it in your language, right? So that is why it is very important when we are handling and using all these large language models, remember language models, how can we make sure that these are representative and diverse enough to make sure we are building inclusive AI. So, and there were a lot of talks this morning and this afternoon that focused on gender diversity, product design diversity, neurodiversity, and which are all great. I'm getting a lot of insights as well. But this particular one, I will be focusing on the language aspect of it and how we can make sure we can build diverse AI. So, generative AI, right? And everyone in this room must have heard, must have used, must have at least seen some of the content of generated from generative AI. What is generative AI? It's just a subset of AI algorithm that is developing new realities based or learned on existing data that it was trained or the current data that it was trained, right? And it is having different modalities. You can generate text, you can generate images, you can generate videos, etc. And it is all that it is generating from the current data that it is saying. And you might have seen that I'm focusing on the current data, or it is learning from the data that it has been trained on. And there is a reason for why. Before I delve into that, just some language facts for you. So there are about, and there is going to be a lot of numbers in this particular slide, so bear with me. There are about 7,000 languages spoken in the world. About 2,000 plus languages are present in Asia itself. And there are 2,500 languages that are at the verge of extinction. There are certain languages, like there are about 46 languages that is spoken by one individual in this whole entire earth. So you can see that there is diversity in languages that we have and that is present in this entire world. Diving into the next stage, where you see these 2 graphs on the screen, which is like, remember what was the number I spoke? I spoke 7,000 languages, right? But out of that, there are only a handful of them are present on the internet. Like you see on the screen, it's English, Russian, maybe French, Spanish, etc. And there is this notion about, okay, if the generative AI models that are trained currently on a vast majority of languages and data that was available on the internet, then you could see what is the amount of language representation that is present in the current large language models, right? So on the right hand side, you see a graph which shows on the x-axis, you would see all the large language models that are currently present. And on the y-axis, you see the percentages of multilingual data that has been used for generating this large language models, correct? And you would see a majority of them are English-centric models because the percentages of different languages that was used in training this data model was very less as compared to the one on the top, which is most languages that are represented in this. And now there is an issue of language data availability itself. It is not like someone said that, okay, I'm going to train my LLM only on English. It is not like that. It is the way the data is present currently in our digital systems, right? So over here on the graph, you see there are these languages, and these are some of the biggest and the richest places where you can find data. Wikipedia, and there is the Common Crawl project, right? Those are the ones which are present. And you see a handful of languages and a handful of GBs of data that is available in these different languages. So you certainly see that there is an issue of language representation itself in the data that has been generated. And so that is why I was saying that, okay, we need to have diverse data sets to make sure our LLMs are diverse enough, right? And when you think of all these harms that occur due to misrepresentation or underrepresentation, right? It is not someone that codes up in the morning and says that, okay, I'm going to write a code just to harm someone. All these harms that happen, maybe it is bias, maybe it is gender diversity, maybe it is representation diversity issues with our AI systems. It is not like, okay, someone says that I'm going to code just to harm a certain section of people, unless you are in an AI red teaming or you are a hacker, of course. So due to all these limited language availability, there is an unintentional harm that can occur, right? Like a simple harm that might occur is like, we all know that in our world, we have colleagues that are working from different parts of the regions. Like someone is in Asia, someone is in Europe. And if the organization decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to use an AI-assisted email application so that to improve the productivity. Take an example of a Japanese coworker. He says he thinks in Japanese, and he says AI to translate it into English to send an email to his colleague in UK saying that, hey, you know what, this kind of task I'm not really comfortable with, I'm not going to do it, or it is difficult for me to do it. But the translation is in such a way that it did not pick up the nuances of that languages, and the other colleague keep pushing on that issue. So this just creates some discomfort. And this is something like a regular harm that might occur in day-to-day life. Then there could be stereotypes that could be emphasized over and over again. Say, for example, there is a news agency which is using AI generated news or description for a celebration that is occurring in Lebanon. So it keeps using certain words which emphasizes stereotypical nature of that society from Middle East, which is again a harm that can occur and something that remains in the minds of people saying that, oh, this thing always happens there. Now, we looked at some of the harms that were like from a perspective of image or what you feel as a person. But there are some economic harms that might occur, right? Say Tamil speaking. Now, Tamil is a language that is spoken on in the southern part of India, and he is using this app that will give him advice on his crop productivity. And say he's a farmer and my crop is only my means by which I'm going to gain some money and gain my livelihood, right? And I'm using this app which just understands English and Hindi, which is again a language spoken across India. And it does not give him appropriate recommendation because that language was not represented in that mobile app. So it could cause him some economic losses there. Now we are talking about some harms which are really causing effects, really causing some major damages. Now, critical situation, say for example, you're using an AI app for responding to emergency calls that the county or the particular area might be getting. Say, for example, I'm using this and I'm a Basque speaking Spanish. I am calling because I had a distress call, but it did not pick up my nuances of the languages and did not prioritize my request. So now the harms that get into picture are getting more and more high risk or critical, right? The other one could be legal and administrative. Like, for example, nations are now thinking about using some of the AI generated applications for immigration. Say, for example, I am a person who is really looking forward to transform my life and to look for opportunities elsewhere. I'm trying to use this AI system. Did not recognize my language, and that's how it interpreted my application in a way which was not acceptable for the country that I was applying for. Again, economic harm that had happened to me. Healthcare disparities, very common, wherein it is not understanding what are the symptoms you are trying to tell that AI app, saying that, oh, I'm having this issue, I'm this issue, and your symptoms are not being read correctly by that AI model, and it gives you suggestions which does not help you and thus creating disparities in healthcare. The talk about the economic disadvantages. Again, if I am a person who is hosting my seller on a platform, and again I am writing all my description in a southeastern language, but it is not getting converted appropriately to the widely accepted language of that platform. Again, there is my product will not show up in the top 10 searches, and I'll not get money. So again, those diversity issues happening. And like I said, there are 2,500 languages around the world which are at the verge of extinction. So there is a erosion of linguistic diversity that is happening. Then there could be biased content moderation. Just because your video was from a certain particular language, it was unnecessarily moderated for content. Like, I'm a African language speaking person, I post my video and that's my only means of income, getting likes and stuff, but it is moderated just because it did not understand what language it is. Again, it is all of these is again enforcing reinforcement of the language hierarchy that we have in the society. So whatever the AI system is, it is getting trained on the data, and data is a reflection of a society which is not as diverse, and that is the issue. And there is challenges while we are collecting this data, right? Data availability, like I showed in previous slides, we don't have much data in all the languages in the first place to be able to train the data, language models. Then second, there is bias in this data. Only the young, the affluent, the Western concepts are getting pulled in the data because they are the ones who are using the internet the most. So your data source is biased. There are ethical considerations about privacy. There are ethical considerations about copyright in using certain data set. There is ethical considerations when it comes to representation. So that is another aspect. And code switching. So code switching is a very fun thing. Like, I speak Marathi, which is a language spoken in the western part of India. And when I'm talking or texting with my family, I will speak in two languages. I'll speak in English and I will speak in some Marathi words in one single sentence. But now the end user is a person, is a human, he understands it. But how will you make sure that AI understands this code switching and how to handle those code switches? And of course, there are cultural nuances that are embedded in the languages, in the idioms and phrases that we have, some of the things which I cannot understand, but that might be a very funny phrase in Spanish, but that might be a funny phrase in English, but it doesn't understand. And how to make sure that your LLM understands there, right? So, and I just have like a couple of minutes now, I'll just focus on some of the practical recommendations, right? What we can do as the open source community. The number one is crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is just getting those communities heard about multiple languages. There's an open source project by Mozilla which records languages from different users. You can go in, you can talk in your language a certain sentence, and that's how the data gets collected on you. The other is balance sampling. Balance sampling is all about your strategy where you will make sure that the low source availability language are sampled more. That's how the Bloom model was trained on. Then a major portion of it will come from community involvement. Now, community involvement, there have been a lot of initiatives that are happening in Africa, in India, where we are tapping into, like the open source world is tapping into the various regions and getting that data represented and converted into a digital form, which then can be used in your LLM model training. Data augmentation, again, using the machine learning techniques itself to create that data that is not available. There is, I think there is a project by Google itself which does the same thing to make sure they have enough training data. The synthetic, how can't we talk about synthetic data in a major conference happening in 2024? Obviously, use of synthetic data to create the languages that are not represented in the training data sets. There are initiatives across that are going, one of which is AI for Bharat, which does AI-based techniques to clean and expand these corpus of 17 Indian languages and make sure that high quality language data is available. Data quality controls. Now, here is the reason where you can have the human in the loop, where you can have speakers from diverse region participate in the project where you are collecting that data itself. Then you have data monitoring. It's now Facebook, Meta, has this project called No Language Left Behind, where it monitors this presence of different languages that it has in the training data, and it can see which data is underrepresented, which language is underrepresented. And the last one is the collaboration on data sharing. So there needs to be some collaborations between universities and I'm speaking to this audience at All Things Open because I think we are the ones who can make this difference by our open source projects, open source contributions to the initiatives like Massive Dataset. Literally, it is called Massive Dataset, and it has people contributing in 54 different languages. There are different organizations that contribute to this data set to make sure they can create inclusive and more representative data, which is representing the people speaking different languages. So these are some of the things that as a developer, as a contributor to open source, I think we can do to make sure that we are generating a more inclusive data sets to eventually train the LLM models that will be used in and evidently be used in the future for the different apps and different AI systems that we'll create. And I'm just happy that I was able to share my thoughts, and I am also a part of a SaaS EIG, which is now even before EIGs became big, SaaS, which is literally in the backyard of Raleigh, we had that EIG, which is International Connections, and we have multiple EIGs, which is catering to able neuro drivers. We have Pride, and I'm very fortunate to be working in a team which is a data ethics practice, which is thinking and working on practical strategies to make sure that we are making our technology more diverse and more trustworthy by nature. So just visit our website and you'll get more information, and happy to talk. I'll be here at ATO. Thank you so much for your time.